Seventh graders, this is step 4 for your Project 2 still life drawing. You should have your value 3D shading assignment completed before you move on to this step. Complete that assignment and submit it onto Schoology. I believe it is due today, November 30th. So my virtual learners, if you do not turn in your value shading assignment, then that is going to affect your grade. So for any assignment that's due, if it is late from now on for the rest of the school year, you will lose a point on your grade. It does affect it. So please make sure that you turn it in promptly on time. So with this still life, the reason why we did that value assignment was to kind of warm up, get used to shading using the value scale. And, you know, let me look for it if you are confused, like, what do you mean value assignment? Check the old lesson folders. I'll go through all my projects here, somewhere in here. Where are you? There he is. Okay, so we practice the value scale because you're going to be applying that shading technique to your still life. We practice the cylinder form and the sphere form because these are the two that you will be using for your still life as well. So when you take your time on this and you really practice and try your best on this, it's going to benefit you for your final project, your final results of your project. So take a look at my still life. Make sure that all of your lines are erased, it's cleaned up, you've added some detail to that apple. You've also added some of those reflections. I'm just gonna make mine a little bit darker to your bottle that represents right here. Because in this picture, I have a big bright light shining right here, and that shows, and it's hard because there's a bit of a reflection, there we go. It shows the shadows, which we will be adding today, and shows that reflection in the bottle, which we'll be concentrating on today. So make sure that yours is all cleaned up and ready to go. If you have to go back to steps 2 or 3 to double check and make sure that you're ready to go, you have the horizon line in the background, then do that before you continue with this step. You're going to need your art book with your assignment. If you have this printed out, have this ready next to you. With the shading, you could just, you know, look at the screen. I have this picture on this page, so you could look at that. If you don't have this available, that's fine. You're gonna need a pencil. You also might need an eraser. And, you know, either eraser like this, or if you have a big one, have that handy. And you are also going to need a brown colored pencil. We're gonna start on the bottle for today. My plan is to have videos for each object and talking about shading and applying color. So you will need colored pencils for this project. Brown for today, yellow, orange, red. Those are the only other colored pencils. Purple. If you have a colored pencil box that has a bunch of different shades, cool. But if you have just the 5 colored pencils, little boxes, yeah, yellow, orange, red, brown, and purple would be all the ones that you need. I'll talk more if you don't have those certain colors, then I would be open for you changing up a color, switching one color for another, but it'd be best if you try to replicate this as best as you can using those colors. So colored pencils you will need for this. We can't use crayons or markers. It's on your school supply list. I'm going off of that for these projects. So colored pencils, you could get a 10-pack of colored pencils from the store for like $1. So if you need some help with that, let me know, or talk to mom and dad or a parent or guardian at home. Okay, so what we're gonna do first for this step is we are going to add shadows. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. So I'm gonna start with this bottle, and I'm gonna put this over here. Oh, there we can see it. Not so much of a glare. We're gonna start with this bottle right here. So looking at where the bottom of this shadow of the bottle starts, it starts about right here. And then it goes about halfway in between your yellow bucket. So I'm just gonna mark it really lightly. Okay, that's how wide my bottle shadow is gonna be. And then noticing the difference between the bottle and the shadow is a little bit wider at the top and it's a little lower. So here's there, and then I'm thinking it's gonna be probably about this low, so really lightly drawing a line. And then it's gonna be a little bit wider than the actual bottle. It's kind of stretched out. So now it's the time to kind of looking at the bottom, knowing that it's coming in to the sides. You want it to be accurate in the movement and the shape. Okay, so same shape as you see here, except a little bigger. Draw lightly in case you make a mistake. You can go ahead and draw along with me, but watching, observing your image as well, the bottle shape. Sketching lightly. And kind of the same way of how, when you were first drawing that bottle, going down on both sides at the same time. Draw lightly in case you need to erase. And then you won't see any of those marks. This is our shadow for the bottle. Okay. Didn't really need to add this line right here because you will just be coloring it in with your pencil, so you don't have to do that. It just helps me kind of map out. Next, let's move on. Let's just go to the reflections. If you haven't done this, if you look very closely, this bottle is glass, so there is kind of light reflections that I want you to incorporate. If you didn't do that already. This one's a big one right here. Matches that. Okay. Let's move on to other shadows. Let's move on to the yellow bucket. So inside the bucket, there is a darker shadow. I just want you to mark it. We won't color it in yet, but just mark it. And then don't worry about this part on the bucket yet. When we start to add shade to the bucket, we'll worry about that. Right now it's just marking the shadows, and we'll eventually color and shade them in. So now I'm doing this area, this big dark shadow that comes from the bucket, because remember that light is shining right here. Pew. Let's concentrate on the apple shadow. So it comes out a little bit in front, curves a little and goes off the page. And then you can see the gray and the difference between the shadows. So about right here, again, curves a little and goes off the page. And then let's go to the orange mug. I'd start about right here. Now it's going to go onto the yellow bucket, so we'll draw that. But it doesn't go onto the apple. It just misses the apple, kind of goes behind the apple. And then it does, you can't see it because the bottle is so dark, it does go right about here, but we don't have to worry too much about that. We're going to be coloring it in soon. So I think, oh, and let's do inside, just that big difference between the shadow right here and the rest of the mug. Let's just draw that line, making sure you are observing and looking at your still life. I'm going to go back and you know, draw lightly at all times until you're super confident that that's where it's going to be. But I'm going back because I think this is a little bit bigger. Okay. All right, so we added the shadows. That's the first part of this video. The next part, and for the rest of class time, we're just going to concentrate on the bottle. So one little thing at a time. Next week I'll have all the videos ready for the rest, but maybe 2 objects a class period, and then that apple in the background. So a couple more weeks, probably finish this right before the holiday break. But for this rest of class time, we're just going to concentrate on the bottle and the shadow of the bottle. So really take your time, making it solid, staying in the lines, following my video directions, listening and watching all of the video directions. I'm going to be doing this with you. You'll be doing it with me. I know when I was in 6th grade, I had to do a still life. I still have it. And I've been looking at it and thinking about, okay, how did my teacher help me? And I just think my teacher had me set up all of this stuff. I don't think we talked too much about value and shading, little bits, but I remember doing it a lot on my own, and I see a lot of mistakes that I made. So I'm trying to learn from my teacher in middle school, in 6th and 7th grade. And I thought, oh, it'd be nice if like they sat with me and really showed me how to draw and shade. And so that's what I'm trying to do for you. So really be paying attention. And you know, if you have any questions, especially my virtual learners, please reach out and let me know. Okay, so what we're gonna do is the bottle. I have a dark brown colored pencil. If you just have, you know, a brown, kind of more of a medium brown, or even, you know, even a black. I wouldn't go completely black because it has a little bit of a brown tint to it. So I'd rather you work with a brown, even a lighter brown, and then we can go over with our pencil and make it a little bit darker instead of using just a straight black. So for this and coloring in, I want you to think about, I don't want you just to go ahead and coloring in all over the place. Your marks affect how your work looks, your pencil marks. So when you are coloring, like we've learned since kindergarten, the edges are always a good start. Making sure those edges are crisp. You know, that's not a bad idea. I would just go over that little shadow mark that we did. Feel free to move your art book around. It makes it easier. Okay, and then the movement. So I'm with each one of these, except for the apple because it's a rounder form, but these are up and down cylinder forms, even the bottle. I want you to make your movement going up and down, not side to side, up and down from top to bottom. So starting on one side. Now you might have to do a little bit of a circular motion around the edges, or you know, you might have to thicken the edges. That's what I do, just very carefully, but then going over, overlapping and making sure it has that even look to it, that up and down look. You might want to outline those reflections before you start coloring, shading in around them. We are doing the bottle first because it doesn't really need much shading. It's pretty solid. So kind of warming up to this next step to finishing up our still life. Another thing you might need, and I'll say this in the notes on the page, assignment or the steps page, pencil sharpener. So having that on hand with your colored pencils is always nice to have. So you can go ahead and start, color along, shade along with me. Take your time. This is all we're going to do for today. And if you don't finish, don't worry. We'll finish it next time. So yeah, up and down motion. I want you to think about that with next 3 of the objects, the cylinder form objects that we color. So, you know, if you like going back and forth, then turn your page to the side. But if you can handle going up and down like that, you'll feel it out. Try out different things. Now with this, I'm pushing down pretty hard because I want it to be dark. You know, so pushing down hard with this bottle. And then I'll show you how to use your pencil and kind of give it a little more of a darker look. Really making those edges crisp, and crisp is kind of a funny word for it, but just nice, clean edges. And sometimes I go back and I just kind of add a little bit more. This is when it's really nice to have a nice sharp pencil around these little reflections, these smaller areas. Right at the top. Okay, so now after I've colored it, and I'm just kind of double checking the edges and making sure they're clean and crisp, and you know, looking at this picture, that's a nice defined edge contrasting with the purple background. And then up here, you know, you have the opening of the bottle and that kind of that part of the opening, the top of the bottle. I'm just kind of going over that line and making sure that that stands out. Okay, I'm just going to go back and kind of clean up and try to make it nice and even throughout. Some areas I went really dark. I pushed down really hard, so now I'm kind of trying to balance that throughout the whole piece. So just being aware of that. If you're going to push down really hard with your colored pencil, then do it throughout the whole thing. And it makes it look a little bit wonky, uneven if you don't. All right, now you could take your pencil and you could make it a little bit darker because this is pretty dark. and maybe just a lighter shade, kind of feel it out if you like it. But I think it looks a little more accurate mixing a pencil with the brown. If you have a lighter, hold on a second, my computer screen fell asleep. Okay, if you have a lighter brown, I would highly recommend that you use a pencil and just go over all of it like lightly at first. You can always go darker, but after you go darker, I would clean up the edges up here, kind of emphasize those grooves in the bottle, the opening of the bottle. No, you don't have to do the whole thing, but you just kind of go around. Just gives it a little more. Okay. All right, so once you have your bottle, it looks kind of funny because you can see my pencil marks with the glare because they're shiny. Oh, you can see where I've missed too. That's funny. I'll hold it up like this. The glare from the lights rub off on the graphite of the pencil. Oh, lighting. All right, so after you do your bottle, then I want you to go ahead and take your pencil and color in your bottle's shadow. So that again, it's pretty dark. You're just gonna go ahead and very carefully, along the edges, one thing I really like to do is make teeny tiny circle motions. That just helps me control. You also want a nice straight edge, so making sure you go around the edges carefully. But if you do little teeny circles, nice and even, I'm not pushing down too hard, that'll make it easier to color in smaller areas. And something to start considering too, when you're coloring and shading with pencil especially, this hand is your enemy, this area, because that smears everything. So really being conscious of that. So I'm already kind of starting to see it with some of yours, my in-person students. So just be careful not to smear. That's why we're kind of strategically starting from one side. But once you get all of it done, it kind of makes it hard. So yeah, just be careful. So again, same idea, going up and down, trying to make it nice and even, one shade for the shadow. Okay, so for this step, adding the shadow lines and then concentrating on the bottle. Have fun!